So you have two yous inside yourself battling for what to do. Oftentimes it's a battle between ego and soul. Ego wants to keep the peace for other people. Soul just wants to be. Soul just wants to live through its own eyes, through its own vessel. Ego lives through the eyes of other people. Welcome to Magical Moments. I'm your host, Aura Vibin. If you're on a healing journey and you're interested in self-improvement, shadow work, spiritual secrets, and how to make every moment a little more magical, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. Welcome back to Magical Moments, my magical, beautiful people of the night. We're recording this at 11:30 at night, of course, but I would have it no other way. I love the nighttime. I come alive in the nighttime. So this episode is all about people pleasing and how people pleasing is actually one of the greatest forms of manipulation there is. I came to this great realization when I was a people pleaser and still a recovering people pleaser because I can see that I still have these tendencies, but it's always due to manipulation to get something in return. So today we're going to be talking about why we people please, hint, hint, manipulation, what the spiritual consequences of people pleasing are, some examples of people pleasers in action, who is most likely to people please and why, and of course, how to shift into an empowered state by owning your truth and watching anything that was fake around you completely fall away. We're going to be breaking illusions today. So this just might be a life-changing episode. Stay tuned. So why do we people please? The main reason is manipulation of others out of fear of rejection or abandonment. So losing those closest to us or breaking free from herd mentality scares us because in ancient times, being part of a group kept us safe. It meant that we had food, we had shelter, we had security. So we had to keep the peace. So one of the main reasons we manipulate others is to keep the peace out of fear of rejection or abandonment. We also do this to be understood and validated as a way of feeling worthy, often through over-explaining ourselves. So let's say that we were misunderstood and we made a comment and we were in a group at a party and then everyone looked at us the wrong way. And then we have this tendency to just be like, oh no, I actually meant this. And this is because we're not solid and grounded in our own selves and in our truth. We don't spend enough time validating ourselves. So we over-explain so that other people can validate us and we can feel like, oh my gosh, I am worthy. Wow, thank you for that validation. Great, that's great. We also people please because we're disconnected from ourselves. We're disconnected from our values and we don't know how to speak up. It might not even be that you're just seeking external validation. It could be that you just don't know how to connect to yourself because you've been people pleasing for so long. You're so far disconnected from your own inner voice that you don't even know where she is anymore. You lost him or her. Another reason is growing up with trauma and as a result, having low self-esteem and being unaware of our own toxic patterns. We're going to get into all of this. We're most likely to people please to people we don't feel would accept us if we shared our authentic selves with them. So extremely judgmental people, for sure, who are operating from unconscious biases and traumas and who are generally not open-minded enough to consciously communicate. So think of your judgmental father, think of your judgmental anyone around you who critiques everything that you do, you will have a natural urge to people please around them because you just don't want to deal with their toxicity. But we're going to get into why you should actually create a boundary rather than people pleasing and manipulating. So let's get into what manipulating actually is. It is defined as the use of means to exploit, control, or otherwise influence others to one's own advantage. Kind of like a people pleaser. People pleasers use manipulation to control emotions, people, narratives, the way they're perceived, and to sustain a false reality, all just to keep themselves safe from confrontation, from discomfort, from having those real hard conversations that would deepen themselves and the people around them. People pleasing is defined as a person who has an emotional need to please others, often at the expense of his or her own needs or desires. Which means, let's say you truly wanted to talk about your political beliefs, but you know it's not going to feel good for others around you, but your purpose here is to communicate truth to this world. So now there's like a split in your mind. You have a main desire, which is to express your truth and express your beliefs, but your emotional need is to please others to keep yourself safe in your bubble, protected in your comfort zone, and avoiding all conflict at all costs. So what are the spiritual consequences of people pleasing? What's actually happening is you're creating cognitive dissonance in your mind, and your mind is becoming fractured and fragmented, unable to function properly, disconnecting you from your intuition, your values, and your soul. This is like the worst pain ever, because you can't even understand what's happening to you. All you know is you're slowly drifting away from yourself. So you're wondering why you can't speak your truth, offer valuable insight, or create a strong identity rooted in grounded values. It's because you haven't fought for yourself during situations where confrontation was presented. Now, every time someone brings up their political stance, you have one aspect of you screaming internally to speak your mind, because it could result in a deep conversation and change the course of consciousness between the two of you. And another aspect of you is saying it's not worth it to speak up because the confrontation is going to be too painful and da-da-da-da-da. So you have two yous inside yourself battling for what to do. Oftentimes it's a battle between ego and soul. Ego wants to keep the peace for other people. Soul just wants to be. Soul just wants to live through its own eyes, through its own vessel. Ego lives through the eyes of other people. What else is at stake when you don't speak your mind out of fear of losing someone's approval? What are the other spiritual consequences? You're losing your own self-connection. You're losing access to your soul's calling, your intuition. You're losing access to divine wisdom from Source, because Source won't gift you with a life-changing idea when Source knows you won't act on it anyway because of fear of how you'll be perceived if you act on that idea. Other things that happen as spiritual consequences of people pleasing are that relationships are no longer satisfying to you. Of course they're not. You're living in a false reality, and people that you're presenting yourself as this like fake fucking person, they don't even know the real you. So they're like, who is this that I'm talking to? You lose your authenticity because you're constantly being a chameleon to everyone. You're like, who the fuck am I? I have no idea who I am anymore. But one of the worst spiritual consequences that we face is we create a false reality. We end up losing ourselves to the illusions that we created. There's this saying that goes, the only thing you'll lose by being real is something that was fake to begin with. I love this saying so much because over the course of this pandemic, it's so easy to see what's real and what's not for me, right? But even if what's real and what's not is real for me and not real for you, aka my truth doesn't have to be your truth, but we can all share truths to get on the same page. If you can't share your truth with someone because they're just closed-minded and don't want to listen, that's not a safe space. And so what happens is most of us don't feel safe in this reality expressing ourselves. So we're all living in our own unique individual false realities and illusionary worlds because we all don't feel safe to speak our minds, knowing that people are not able to see multiple perspectives. They're only able to see from their own narrow-minded perspective, which makes people pleasing even bigger. It is better to speak up and lose everything around you because this is how you start fresh and you end up opening room for others to find you. You end up, let's just say that you lose everyone that you ever knew for being 100% yourself. At least your soul tribe can find you now. At least with the new you, the real you, your soul tribe can find you now. The people who not only will understand and value communicating with you, but will celebrate your existence. And there's this other saying that goes, you might as well be hated by the entire world for who you actually are because people will hate you regardless. It would really suck if you created this entire persona for your entire lifetime, being who everyone wanted you to be, but then being hated for it. That would be a much harder life to live because you actually hate yourself because you don't know yourself. So you might as well know yourself, love yourself, and be hated for it because then you could sleep at night. So if that means you lose family members, friends, your work, whatever, because you were being you, then everything was an illusion. Everything was fake to begin with. Let it fall. Let it fall away. What are some examples of people pleasing? Like we said, over-explaining yourself at the dinner table when you talk about your interests and you receive dirty looks or eyes of disapproval. You pick up on that energy and now you're not comfortable being judged, so you over-explain yourself to make sure everyone still likes you. This contributes to a lack of confidence. If people don't understand you, end the conversation there. People don't have to understand you. Your mantra should be, I am meant to be misunderstood. I am meant to piss people off. Other examples of people pleasing, this could look like someone inviting you to an outing, a date, a party, a girls' night out, and you, knowing you need to rest, or simply because you just don't fucking feel like going out, you want to say no, but instead you say yes to make everyone else happy except yourself. This results in having a shitty night anyway because it wasn't in the highest alignment for you or for your soul to be there. So it was a waste of energy, or you're going to show up at that event at 50% because you don't actually want to be there. So it's a waste of energy for everyone. If it's not a fuck yes, It's a fuck no. And how do you know if it's a fuck yes? If someone asks you something, in your gut, you feel it right away. You're like, That's how I navigate this world. If someone asks me to do something, if it's an instant that's like, oh wow, okay, I'm doing that. If someone asks me to do something and it's like oh, maybe we'll see, it's usually a no. So pick up on that. And the closer you get to these and these in your gut, you're going to have such a strong intuition. You're just going to know what actions to take, when to take them. You're going to spend less time in your mind and more time in action, actually acting these things out. Examples of people pleasing also looks like someone disrespecting your boundaries, being condescending to you or insulting you in some way that makes you uncomfortable. And then you say nothing about it. Not standing up for yourself out of fear of confrontation or losing what you're actually trying to gain from this person. If your boss disrespects you, you'll people please or manipulate to keep your job and get that paycheck. You might think you're being smart about it, but any job where you are not valued and you need to keep your job by being disrespected is a waste of your time and energy, period. It also contributes to feelings of low self-worth and low confidence. And then these people that you surround yourself with who treat you like shit, you actually end up taking on their energies and then treating other people like shit. You become the people you surround yourself with. That quote that you are the collective of the 5 people you hang out with the most, that is so true. So one other example of people pleasing is you overgive at the expense of your health. This one is something I'm still trying to work through and I'm trying to understand why I'm doing it. But I definitely do this. So someone asks you to work late, someone asks you to do something for them and you say yes, you're like the ultimate yes man. And because of this, people actually use you. They see your lack of boundaries and you're an easy target for predators to leech off your energy. So you frequently complain about energy vampires and that nobody sees the real you, but you have no boundaries and you're calling these experiences upon yourself, actually being the energy vampire or actually being that codependent person who needs that exchange of energy to keep going on in your day. I want to give you this little note on people pleasers. It is okay to overextend yourself sometimes, okay? It is okay to say yes and be a yes man. It is okay until it is no longer okay. Meaning you're probably going through these lessons to learn what boundaries are for you, to learn your energetic limits. Maybe you'll have to go through a cycle of people pleasing over and over again, maybe for 6 months, then for 2 years, and you're like, what is going on? It's because you're learning the lesson of empowerment and sovereignty in your own body. Some people pleasers will say, oh, well, I just keep this person in my life because they need me. And I just don't want to confront them because they're not going to understand anyway. They're very 3D, very closed-minded, but they need a lot of love. And basically, I'm their person. They only have me. It's like, okay, if you're going to keep that type of relationship in your life, then just don't complain about it. See how that works. Keep that person in your life and try not to complain about it. Make that relationship an empowered choice and see how that works for you. I can probably guarantee it won't work for very long. Like maybe you'll be able to be their punching bag for a little bit longer, or I call it a venting machine. Like people just use you as their venting machine. It works until it doesn't, until you realize, oh my God, I need boundaries in this world. I need an energetic limit. I need an energetic exchange of some sort that's beneficial for the both of us. Otherwise, this is just not working. Because continuing on in relationships that are not good for you is a form of self-abuse and again, changes the perspective that you have of yourself. The whole goal for healing these people-pleasing tendencies is to heal the relationship you have with yourself. Is to get your energy up and good so you can actually help people the way they deserve to be helped. Because people pleasers often think that they're helping people by depleting their energetic reserves and just like giving all of themselves to people who are not even listening to begin with. They're not. They're not helping anyone. So actually having these solid boundaries make you a better healer and more impactful in the lessons you're trying to teach and the people you're trying to help. Let's get into who is at risk of becoming a people pleaser. These are the main ones that I have seen. So empaths are definitely the main ones. We'll talk about why. Narcissists for sure. People with low self-esteem, trauma holders, and generally unconscious and closed-minded people. Let's get into why the empath is the perfect perfect people pleaser. Qualities of an empath: very intuitive, feels the vibe of a room, and senses exactly what's going on in other people's emotional states. They are givers and often overgive their energy because they have no boundaries and no idea on how to create them to become empowered, which means they are also often codependent with others. They attract energy vampires because they themselves have aspects within them that are energetically vampirish. They also attract narcissists because in a way they are codependent. So narcissists and codependents go hand in hand. When an empath thinks they're helping someone, they rarely are, and are instead depleting themselves and giving healing, usually in the form of communication that doesn't get through to the other person because the other person doesn't want to heal. You can't help anyone that does not want to heal. And when you know this, you're going to save so much energy and so much effort. You're going to know that your healing is going to come from a place of magnetism. People who will heal from you will be attracted to you. They will find you on the little corner of the internet or wherever or however you're giving your healing. The people who need it will find you. When you can rest in that, you won't have to overdo it. The empath often overgives from a place of being underdeveloped and boundaryless. They also don't have discernment on who to actually give their healing to because they're so disconnected from their intuition. They need to learn boundaries. The empath needs to learn who to share their healing and gifts with, how to become receivers of energy rather than just givers, and to separate themselves from the room or the people they're with. It's very important to be grounded in your own energy so that you're not always picking up on the extra vibrations of other people and you can actually just be in your own body. At one point, this was getting so intense for me. I was feeling what people were feeling. I was hearing what people were thinking. I was so energetically enmeshed with the people I was surrounded with because I had no solidified aura. I didn't have like a strong energetic field. So work on that. Work on your Merkaba. There's going to be another episode about this devoted to empaths. So stay tuned for that. Okay, let's get into the narcissists. Narcissists are major manipulators, aka major people pleasers. They know exactly what a person needs to hear, and they use other people's weaknesses and blind spots to their advantage. What does the narcissist, the person with low self-esteem, trauma holders, and generally unconscious people all have in common? What are these people driven by? It is the need for validation or acceptance. The narcissist didn't receive love when they were younger, so they built up walls and spent excessive amounts of time manipulating others to receive shallow forms of validation. People with low self-esteem and a weak identity please others, and that act of pleasing others contributes to temporary self-worth. But in the long term, it contributes to self-hate because people-pleasing disconnects you from your soul, and it takes you further away from your identity, your values, and your integrity. Trauma holders are operating from a space of damage control most of the time, so they spend time people-pleasing to avoid confrontation because they can't handle the additional stress. So they usually go along with the crowd to keep themselves safe away from further stress. This is an interesting dilemma. Since our society isn't a safe container, most of us are operating from intense levels of trauma. And so we find it hard to integrate into any community while expressing our authentic selves because it'll further perpetuate fragmentation and more trauma. So we all stay silent, suffering, and it's a cycle of increasing unconsciousness. So what it actually takes, like these people who are trailblazers in consciousness and expanding humanity are the people who have the hard conversations that nobody wants to have, like how, the government controls us, but also all of the mind control in our media, like these questions that make you seem crazy and that make you seem like conspiracy oriented. No, these are actually the people who need to speak out because they're sharing truth. Finally, the unconscious people who are generally closed-minded. These people find themselves people-pleasing as a way to avoid deepening relationships out of fear of navigating truth. I would say 80% of the people on this planet are unconscious and don't appreciate truth simply because, they haven't had a spiritual awakening. And we can't judge because I was there for the first 25 years of my life, very unconscious. Until you can admit that you have been mind-controlled your entire life, which is a huge ego death. Until you've gone through that, you have been operating unconsciously, which is a large chunk of this world. Hence why light workers, truth seekers, spiritual people in general are talking about the difficult conversations. Props to you guys. I love you so much. So how can we all stop living in a false reality? How can we all stop manipulating others instantly? The answer is very simple. to live truthfully, to prioritize truth above all else, to commit to breaking illusions, to listen to the whisper and your internal guidance system that tells you to speak up when you should, to offer your opinion fluidly without shutting your inner voice down just to keep the peace. We must get comfortable having uncomfortable conversations, especially with those closest to us. You're allowed to have your own opinion. Everyone is. Honest conversations deepen relationships. You're not having honest conversations with the people you love. You're living in a false reality. You're actually stealing the other person's energy. You're actually being selfish because you're living in your own world and the other person has no idea who you are. You're like wearing a mask with this person. They don't even know who you are. You're like lying to them every single day. So it's definitely difficult to like live with yourself. We should question if those around us are reflective of our values. Do we admire the people around us? They are indicators of how we're living and if we are living as the true us. When you ignore your inner truth to please other people, this is how you wake up at 40 years old with a family you barely recognize and a life you fucking hate, all because you yes-manned your way there to receive some sort of temporary comfort, pleasure, or gain. It's not worth it. Being you is always what's worth it. Being you is the only option. Say no often. Have strong boundaries. Understand and prioritize your energy. Become conscious of what your body is speaking to you when you're around people who make you uncomfortable, or when you're in places that don't feel safe for you to express your truest self. Your body is always talking to you. Okay? Your body holds divine wisdom. Listen to it. Have energetic standards for how people must treat you if they want to be in your world or your bubble. Not everyone should have access to your energy, and those that do should honor you. They know how to treat you. They celebrate your existence. They wish upon stars for you. They contribute to your dreams and encourage you along the way. They can have the real, hard, deep conversations with you that come from a place of love and wanting to constructively move you in the right direction. Because people can give you all the criticism they want, but if it's not coming from a place of love, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't listen to it. So make sure you surround yourself with people who encourage deeper levels of love within you. That's so important because the stronger and more deeply you love, the more of a light you can be in this world. And the more love you're surrounded by, the more of your own darkness you can handle because there's a safe container for you to go there. There's a safe container for you to dive into your shadows, knowing that when you come back up, you're loved by yourself and the people around you. Speak up, shine your light, be you boldly, period. People pleasing will only lead to immense suffering internally, cognitive dissonance, not knowing who you are, not knowing what your soul wants, where to go. It's the fastest way to stop recognizing yourself. Let me know if this episode helped. Follow me on socials. I'm mainly on TikTok or Instagram, now on YouTube. So I'm actually recording this podcast on YouTube if you want to watch my face as I speak, but I literally just stare at the computer the whole time, but it's fine. Let me know what you thought of this podcast. Stay connected. I love you, magical beings. Until next week. Bye.